Well, now, a little earlier, I spoke to Ed Miliband about what he'd said regarding public sector pay during his leadership campaign. You said upon campaigning for your position, you said this is an ideological attack on the public sector. The truth is the public sector pay freeze is absolutely the wrong thing to do because it's making people who can't afford it bear the burden.
And what the government has done...
But you did say that.
Well, let me just...
And you're now saying...
No, well, let me explain to you.
It's right.
No, I'm not. What the government has done is that they've moved to a 1% pay cap, the same thing that we did when we were in government. And I think in the circumstances where we've got a government that is racking up the bills of borrowing for economic failure, not to invest in schools and hospitals, we face a choice as a Labour Party. Do we say the priority is more than a 1% increase? And by the way, that 1% increase can be spread as an average, so you protect the lowest paid and don't give big increases to the highest paid. But do we say as an opposition, we want more than 1% increase in the public sector? Or do we say, actually the priority is jobs and services and employment?
But you actually said on the hustings in Leeds at the 2010 Labour leadership contest, the public sector pay freeze is absolutely wrong.
But the pay freeze...
Now you're saying, I'm afraid to say, whatever the reasons, it's now right.
But to be fair, the government has changed its policy.
No, but you've changed your policy.
No, because...
You haven't changed your policy?
Yeah, I haven't.
It's still wrong.
Let me explain. The government introduced a freeze, and a freeze which actually hit the lowest paid workers despite promising not to. We're saying, as we did in government, John, because we said it in government, that for the second 2 years, for the years 3 and 4 of this Parliament, we'd have a 1% pay cap on average, protecting the lowest paid. Now, I think that's the right choice between jobs and pay, and I think it's the choice that the Labour Party is right to face up to.
But you are supporting a freeze in public sector.
It's not a freeze, pay. Actually, it's a 1% increase, to be fair, and it's a 1% increase
that will be distributed.
Inflation
is running at higher than that.
Of course it isn't. Of course it isn't, and it's a difficult choice.
And it's not what you said 18 months ago.
Well, I don't agree with that, actually, because I say the government has changed its policy, and what the government implemented in the first period of this Parliament is different from what we're proposing for the later part of this Parliament.
So you both had a U-turn. The government and you.
No, we haven't had a U-turn, John. Look, what we're saying very simply is that when it comes to a choice between pay and jobs, a choice that the private sector is confronting around the country, a choice that local authorities are confronting around the country, we've made the right choice.
Why can't you say, look, that's what I believed 18 months ago, the circumstances are so different that I'm now changing my mind?
We haven't changed our mind. We've taken a consistent approach on this. We did it in government, John. I was a member of the cabinet that in 2009 implemented a 1% pay...
You called it an ideological attack on the public sector.
Well, as I said, I go back...
That is what you called it.
But I go back to this...
Is it or isn't it? Is it still an ideological attack on the public sector?
It's a different policy that we're talking about, John. It's a 1% pay rise on average across the public sector. It's not what the government proposed for the first period of this Parliament. And as I say...
It's called a 1% pay freeze.
Well, I don't think 1% is a freeze, but let's not have an argument about that. As I say, I was part of a cabinet that took this decision in 2009, John.
You see,
a similar decision to the decision we're taking now. You know, look, some people don't like this decision, but as I say, in the time when we were in government, we took a similar decision because we wanted to protect pay. And just look at what's happening, protect jobs. Look what's happening around the country. Local councils are saying, faced with a choice between jobs and pay, it's right to prioritise jobs. People in the private sector, unions, by the way, are negotiating with employers and saying, look, to protect our company, to make it, to protect jobs here, we're going to take difficult decisions.
You seem to have upset your union paymasters.
Well, that's what happens in politics. When you take difficult decisions, people get... I don't think you should use the word paymasters, by the way. The unions themselves actually give us about half of our funds because a lot of our funds come from party members who actually make one of the largest contributions to our funds. So don't believe everything the Tories tell you about this.
Nevertheless, it's a very substantial chunk of your funding, and when they bark, you have to listen.
Well, when they object or disagree with what I say, I listen, but I take my own decisions, and that's what that's what people expect.
Is plain wrong. He's wrong.
He is wrong. Yeah, I disagree with him. I don't disagree with him on everything, but I disagree with what he said in the last 24 hours. Of course, I do.